All right, our guest this evening, when you get, oh, there he is. Hi, Mr. W. Brett Wilson. He's a businessman, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and was a panelist on the Dragon's Den in seasons 3, 4, and 5. And he's been gracious enough to share with us some time this evening and have a bit of his story. So, hello, Mr. Wilson.
Hello, and thank you for the introduction. And let me point out that
Yes.
you missed probably one of the most important things in my biography. I grew up in a place called North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Pretty proud of that.
I did know that. I'm sorry, and I'm glad you I'm glad you mentioned that.
No, the prairie boy, you can take the boy out of the prairie, but you can never take the prairie out of the boy.
Fair enough.
I'm
I
pretty
hear
proud
you.
of my roots.
Well, and you should be. You've done an awful lot in your career so far, have you not? Really?
Well, it's been an interesting time in terms of leaving North Battleford, but I'll leave that to you in terms of what do you want to hear about? I'm happy to go any direction you want.
Well, when you came out of, I guess, high school, university, you went to university, I should say, for was it civil engineering, I believe?
I ended up studying civil engineering, and let me also tell a story about going to Saskatoon.
Sure.
So in North Battleford, I went to the closest elementary school, which was Brady. I went to the only intermediate school, and that at the time was McKittrick and then Cairns. And I went to the only high school that was an option for me in terms of religion, and I was at the North Battleford Comprehensive High School. There was a Catholic, but there was very limited choices. So off I went to Saskatoon to do an engineering degree. It was either commerce or engineering. My mom had 1 year of university under her belt. I think she dated an engineer. So she talked me into doing engineering. And that's really, I was flipping a coin because ultimately, as you may know, I've lived in both worlds. But at the time I headed off to Saskatoon to do an engineering degree. It was in my second year of university that I found out you have a choice of universities. I just assumed that you went to the closest one. And now, economically, geographically, practically, and the other thing, the great news was the University of Saskatchewan is a great school. So I had nothing to be ashamed of in terms of that choice, but I didn't know that I could go anywhere. I just assumed you went to the closest school, and I'm very proud of my U of S roots.
Awesome. And you said you also went to in Calgary, went to university there as well?
Yeah, so I ended up so I was in Saskatoon, finished an engineering degree, headed to Calgary, and virtually all of my classmates, there were some foreign students, they returned to their foreign homelands, but of the kids that had grown up in Saskatchewan or mostly the Western Canada, but mostly Saskatchewan really, it was small town Saskatchewan, landed in Saskatoon, and then we all came to Calgary. The jobs were all in Calgary at the time, and I would say of my 45 civil engineering classmates, I bet 35 ended up in Calgary. Of the mechanical engineers, almost all. So yeah, we all came to Calgary. 3 or 4 years later, I went back to school, did a business degree, and I ended up doing my entrepreneurship degree, or my MBA in entrepreneurship, a particular focus. Now, I was graduate number 221 of the MBA program at the University of Calgary. And there was a few people before me that qualified, but I was the first to take the designation of entrepreneurship.
Wow.
The reason, back in that year, 1985, the reason was that people were afraid they couldn't get a job if they were labeled as entrepreneurs. Whereas I celebrated the fact that I had been a teaching assistant in finance. Thanks to engineering, then my knowledge of accounting and finance was pretty good, but I was an entrepreneurship major at heart, and I was celebrated that. So I ended up being the first graduate of the University of Calgary MBA program with a specialization in entrepreneurship, and I've never let go of that thought.
So did entrepreneurship it wasn't in your family, was it? At that like when you were growing up?
I didn't think it was. Until later in time, I started to realize how entrepreneurial my father was. My dad was a car salesman. My mom was a social worker. Dad selling used cars was an extraordinarily entrepreneurial experience. Unfortunately, the year I was born, my mom and dad decided to buy a small grocery store in Medicine Hat, Alberta. And I don't think it lasted a year. Big grocery store got built down the street. It went under. And so there was a particular bias, jaundice, chip on the shoulder about taking risk like that. And I remember that, especially in my mother. Now, as a kid, I remember my mom going back to work to help make ends meet. She was a social worker, loved what she did, very good at what she did. And Dad continued in the car business. And In fact, worked in the car business until the week that my mother passed away,
Oh, wow.
and said enough's enough. And he literally retired that day. And he'd saved enough along the way to make a go of it. But they were the roots in terms of all the principles, the values, the dreams, the vision that I had. And until I got out and was looking back, I didn't fully appreciate what incredible parents they were. Dad may not have been a world-class entrepreneur, but as a salesman, the marketing side of what he did, the second part was really my parents were extraordinary community-minded citizens. And I didn't look at that as anything special. I just assumed everyone did it. And again, once I got out into the work world and started to try and find time to allocate to charity, I'm going, how did my mom and do that? How did mom and dad do this? Because I'm having trouble feeding the kids, paying the bills, being at home, getting my job done, and still having time to do community. So no, my parents inspired me in ways that I didn't fully begin to appreciate until I was probably, a couple of kids and a bit of a career bumping along before I started to appreciate just what incredible parents they'd been.
And I think most of us can say that too. When we're growing up, of course, we think we know everything. And no, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, with our parents. And I've said the same thing too about my mom and dad. Yeah, and they're no longer with us either. And you don't realize that the lessons they taught you, even whether they were trying to teach you, I don't know, but things you pick up from them, and things still stick with me today. Some things that I learned from my parents. So yeah, that's the way life is, I think.
I still remember Dad coming home, taking off his leather work shoes, putting on runners, and going door to door to raise money for the United Way or the Cancer Society or whatever. But he'd have half an hour to go door to door and try and raise some money before we had supper.
Wow.
And it's just stuff like that I just never fully appreciated. The traveling he did to be a coach or an assistant coach for me and my sisters. So no, it's probably worth just reinforcing the point that we're both making, which is parents are doing things that we don't even realize in the background, and we sometimes take for granted or even don't give credit to until a later point in life.
Yes. Did you think maybe being from a small town, even I'm going to say North Battleford, it's not really a small town anymore, but did you think
it was a big city when I was there? But
a little bit bigger now.
Yeah.
Did you think that was a hindrance at all?
Again, just stories that are again a little bit out of school but still very relevant. I had skipped a grade, so I took 3 grades in 2 years. So I'd moved up a little quicker, but the other problem was I was small for my age. So I was slow to mature, and I had skipped a grade. So there was a gap between me and the people I went to school with. And that gap was reinforced by, at night I would be playing baseball or football or whatever with people my age, but they weren't the kids I knew from school. So there was a gap. And, we used to call it getting picked on. Today it'd be called bullying. But I lived with being picked on. And so I had a great family life, but my desire to get away, to get to Saskatoon, to the big city was compelling. And I still remember my first day of engineering school looking around, and there's guys in T-shirts that are a little bit dirty. The glasses are taped right in the middle to hold them together. The blue jeans were torn and ripped long before torn and ripped was popular. And I'm looking around going, these guys are geeks. And I smiled and thought, you know what? Just like me. I fit in. I finally fit in to a group of people. And so it was a fresh start. And really, I'm doing an awful lot of charity work back in the community, the Battlefords, because I really do admire and respect the roots and the values that were put upon me. But once again, I didn't respect's the wrong word. I didn't value my parents until I left, and I didn't appreciate the Battlefords until I left. And so I'm pretty proud of both of those, especially my parents and the Battlefords. But again, until you're away and looking back, you don't have sometimes that sober moment to go, I had it pretty good. So yeah, I'm proud to be from the Battlefords. By the way, I can't tell you how many dozens, if not hundreds of times, I drove through Corrobert on my way to Kindersley to then turn the corner and go to Drumheller as I was looping back and forth. No, the Petrocan, well, I'm sure there's more, but the Petrocan at Kindersley, I got a lot of gas, a lot of food, and a lot of chocolate bars at that. So I know Kindersley well from that perspective.
And we're still growing, so to speak, although it's a little bit slower right now with the oil down, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's not the same.
We're coming back. When you were out now, I guess out in the business world, did you get recruited for the Dragon's Den, or how did that work? to be a
So the
panelist
story
on that
there,
show?
well, so Dragon's Den came along. This was it's season 15 now, so 2005, let's say it started. One of the first dragons was a woman named Jennifer Wood, grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and she had one season on the show. She was a very close friend, and I had actually helped her with a couple of friends in terms of backstopping the financial commitment to be on the show. I watched the show first night because it's my friend, it's Jennifer. And I thought, oh my God, this is awful. I don't like the questions. I don't like the answers. I don't like the results. This is stupid. And I'm just cynical about the whole thing.
Right.
A year later, another friend of mine, Arlene Dickinson, steps in and takes Jennifer's place. Because Jennifer goes, you know what? It wasn't as much fun as I'd hoped it would be. And I'm watching the show and I thought, you know what? Let's give her a go. But if you've ever seen that show Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, same thing. It was stupid questions, stupid answers, stupid everything. And I'm going, this is stupid, stupid, stupid. Then I get an email that said, we'd like you to be the next dragon. I'm going, oh, that's not so stupid. And
I'm gone.
Yeah. So I went and tried out for the show.
Okay.
And I had Arlene on one side of me and Kevin O'Leary on the other. And there was another person that they were demo driving. And we all sat in the studio and we had pitches and we asked questions. And Kevin kept interrupting me. And I thought, are they demoing me or letting him rant? I don't know, like, what's going on here? So I actually talked to the producer and said, what do you want me to do? He keeps talking over me. And they said, stand up for yourself. All right, fine. So I put the elbow up and took my place. Anyway, at the end of that day, they said, good job, but you're not mean enough to be a dragon. So we're not sure that it's going to work. Okay. So they interviewed another 75 to 100 people. I've heard different numbers. And I got a call about 2 months later from the producer, and I happened to be in, of all places, Africa. It was 4 a.m, so I was in a hotel and I was able to take the call. And I'd been traveling with my daughters, and one of the rules when I'm traveling with my kids is the phones get turned off during the daytime, so to speak. So 4 a.m. was a perfect time to take a call. And the guy came back to me and said, look, we're down to you and one other person as possible dragons. I'm going, I thought you dropped me. Well, not really. Okay, well, thank you. Anyway, they said, what are the, like, why should we pick you? So I wrote out the top 10 reasons to pick me as a dragon. Now, kind of amusingly, I misnumbered it. There was only 9, but that doesn't matter. Nobody at CBC ever noticed. Anyway, but number 4 was the reason they went with me. And what I said, and I'll paraphrase it for this purpose, but I said you need a combination of cash, courage, and commitment to do deals. I might have said balls, brains, and a wallet, but let's just go with cash, courage, and commitment.
Of course.
And I said, you appear to be somewhat short of all 3 on the show at this time. Because my point was, people aren't doing deals, they're talking about doing deals.
Right.
And I had a background, a history, an experience, particularly in oil and gas, but that was the service sector, that was oil and gas producers, it was all sorts of energy-related businesses where we'd been doing early stage investments. So my commitment to Dragon's Den was, if you pick me, I'll do deals. In the 3 seasons I was on the show, I did 60 deals while on air. I closed 30 of them, and people say, well, why'd you only close half? Well, lots of the deals on due diligence didn't stand up. But the other thing is, and this was the rub point on the show, in that 3-year period, the other dragons only did 2 deals each per year. Well, so I was blowing them away relative to activity. Did I take some risk? Did I write some checks where I looked at them and said, you know what, this money's gone? Yeah, I did. But you know what? On the show, I shook hands and said, we have a deal. And unless there was a true breach of an honest and well-intended comment or a commitment, I stayed with the deal. And guess what? 5 of the deals ended up being Saskatchewan-based, so 5 of the 30. And one of them was out of Moose Jaw. It was, Swift Current. Snappy socks, where you take 2 socks and snap them together before they go in the dryer. Guess what? They stick together. That business is wound up. Then soap nuts out of north central Saskatchewan, I forgot, Melfort. And but it was taking a nut that's grown or found on the ground, and you can throw it in a washing machine and it turns into soap nuts. It was actually a detergent of some sorts. But the 2 businesses that I'm still running with, Hilberg and Burke out of Regina, extraordinary success story, 15, 20 million a year of sales of jewelry out of who would have thought the world headquarters for jewelry in Canada would have been in Regina. And then
Wow.
the guys in Saskatoon who run a business called 320, and 320 makes modular housing, modular offices, modular community centers. They started out taking shipping containers and converting them. But the two core businesses that I have out of Dragon's Den, after all these years, 15 years later, 12 years later, are the two guys, one in Saskatoon and one in Regina. I'm
Wow.
also very proud of those partners.
And you should be. That's awesome. So in your business career, I guess up to now, you've taken some chances, and you said some things haven't worked out quite the way you wanted. And one thing we're trying to let the students in the schools know that sometimes whatever you take a shot at, it's not going to work for you, and to not be afraid about that. And you know what, failing is okay as long as you learn from it. If you fail the second time, it's a choice to
Yeah.
some degree. So again, that's great to hear that, because um, not everybody's going to win right out of the gate. It's just doesn't always happen.
Well, the summary as you described it is you learn from your mistakes. And
In
learning from
theory,
mistakes equals experience. With
yes.
experience, you make fewer mistakes and hopefully more money. But it's not just about money. Are you enjoying the process of building the business you're in? And
Yes.
whether it's a car dealership or a small pizza shop, doesn't
Right.
matter. There's so many things you can do that take on, and you can sell to friends. I've often said that the key to entrepreneurship is retail. People know retail. Well, embedded in that comment is that you will get to know and sell your product, your service to other people. And again, it just doesn't matter. And that's why, as a learning experience, I've often said that a quick service restaurant or selling blue jeans, those are great experiences relative. You don't need to be in an office with financial accounting and statements and all this nonsense. Learning how to market yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And those skills are just as, or actually probably more important. Than you can always hire for the backroom stuff, for sure.
Very much so.
Did you have a mentor when you were in business? Someone you could kind of lean on or talk to and say, "Hey, what do you think about what I'm doing?"
I didn't have I call it a more senior mentor, but I did have a role model. And I remind people that if they don't have a mentor that they can hang on to, there are role models. And especially with the tools that are available now. To a degree, Richard Branson and his passion for marketing was a role model. But go back in time, there was a guy named Herb Sparrow in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Herb was the youngest person ever appointed to the Senate of Canada. Herb sold Kentucky Fried Chicken in North Battleford. Herb owned a business that picked up garbage. Herb built he owned a beach where he developed a subdivision. He was an entrepreneur through and through. Great father, great family friend, great entrepreneur, great business leader, great politician. So in many ways, as much as my father was a best friend and someone that I always talked to regularly, as a role model, Herb Sparrow was unique, and I was a big fan of him. So I just offer that often, if you can't get in touch with someone that you'd like as a mentor, remember, between books and online tools and interviews and all sorts of tools, or all sorts of internet-based tools, there's an awful lot of information you can get to inspire. And by the way, if I could spend a moment, there's 3 things that I think everyone should study. And this gets you into the long term. But the 3 things that we should study as a student, as a trade, at the University of Saskatchewan, at SciAst, I don't care where it is, and even in high school. And the 3 things are starting with marketing. And that's a strong emphasis. Even at university, the engineering college had no marketing. But when I was writing my resume, I'd sure wish I'd had some marketing skills. And so that goes back to, and the world of marketing includes social media. And you don't need to be active in all the social media platforms. But if your competitors are, if your clients are, if your customers are, if your business competitors are, you better know how the tools work, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, doesn't matter. Know how they work. And the other thing is the study of marketing, books, online tools. There's so many things. And again, I emphasize the most important marketing document you'll ever prepare is your resume. And in the world of entrepreneurship, the most important marketing document you'll ever prepare is your first business plan. Selling people on why you are the right person. Study of marketing. Study of entrepreneurship, number 2. And I don't mean the study of entrepreneurship in terms of how to do accounting and finance and human resources, but look at role models, people who've gone before, whether it's someone running a short line farm equipment operation or the Hutterite farmers. They're extraordinarily entrepreneurial in what they do. But then there's big names, and there's, Regina, Saskatchewan are chock full, Regina, Saskatoon, and all the small towns are chock full of entrepreneurs who've started gas stations or restaurants or dry cleaners. And then there's the nationals, people who built a pita pit, or, there's so many different things. But the world of entrepreneurship, take inspiration from those who've done before. And it doesn't matter what they've done. It's the fact that they started from scratch. I happen to love starting businesses with friends. So I've got a lot of my businesses aren't just Brett, they're Brett and so Brett and Daryl do one, Brett and Chad have another, Brett and Matter and another. So I love the leverage that comes from working with family, friends, partners, businesses, whatever. But the study of entrepreneurship gives you that. The third is the study of philanthropy. And some people say, we can't teach someone how to be a philanthropist. Well, you can show them what other people have done. And I use charity quite often in many of my businesses to leverage relationships. Building a new building in a community, we go in and pepper it with all sorts of charity work. That allows me to be one phone call away from the head of the Chamber of Commerce, the head of the United Way, the head of even the mayor, whatever. But just create relationships with the businesses that you're in through the charitable community. So marketing, philanthropy, and charity, marketing, entrepreneurship, and charity, to tie those together, it's a lifelong learning experience, whether you're in grade 6, grade 12, or whether you're studying to be a welder, a nurse, a doctor, or a dentist. Doesn't matter. Entrepreneurship is a tool. It's a way of thinking, and it's invaluable. Again, you don't need to be an entrepreneur all your life. It doesn't need to start. I really wasn't an entrepreneur until I was in my 30s.
Right.
Now, that seemed like forever. But, Ray Kroc, the guy who founded McDonald's, 57 years old when he started McDonald's, and he'd been bumbling. If you look at the Ray Kroc history, he'd been bumbling along. There was nothing about his career that would have said, hey, here's a great entrepreneur in the making. Nothing like that. So it's never too late. Often the entrepreneurial experiences come when maybe you get laid off, there's a divorce, a death, a family, a parting of the ways, you retire from the army, and what are you going to do? The entrepreneurial experience, if you've got the seeds planted, and the seeds planting in Saskatchewan is a common thought, but why not? Just study, grasp, engage.
So, and speaking of Ray Kroc, I was just thinking of Harlan Sanders too.
Yes.
KFC. He was very, very late in life too when he got that going.
No, there was some talk. He was much older. And by the way, you're making me hungry even bringing.
I'm sorry. Well, I'll let you go right away. I just have one more question.
It's been one of my favorite meals. By the way, if I may, since I've got a minute or two left,
sure.
And it's so relevant, and if people choose to look it up, but I'm going to throw a book at you right now.
Okay.
And it's called, and again, here's the problem with the way it's called Cowboy Ethics,
okay.
The Code of the West.
Okay.
And it's probably one of the best books. I got emotional when I discovered it. And let me just quickly read for you.
Sure, you betcha.
10 elements of the Code of the West.
Okay.
Live each day with courage. Take pride in your work. Always finish what you start. Do what has to be done. Be tough, but be fair. When you make a promise, keep it. Ride for the brand. Talk less and say more. I struggle with that, but I understand it. Remember that some things aren't for sale. And also, in the last one, which is powerful, know where to draw the line. So I just offer that the Cowboy Ethics, it's really about, the subtitle is what Wall Street, what business can learn from the Code of the West. And if I may, I would strongly encourage, as much as I have my own book out there, Code of the West is one of my own favorites.
Right. And you know what, everything that you just, all those lessons, I mean, they're just as applicable today as they were back then.
They are so relevant.
Because the other book you have, the one you did, Redefining Success, I guess, Still Making Mistakes.
Yep.
I didn't read when you wrote that. I'm sorry. I didn't know how old is that book?
Oh, the book is now, so it's just after Dragon's Den, so it's probably 8-9 years old now. Yeah.
Okay, right on.
Well, I mean,
So-
it was a story of my life up until the time I wrote it. A little bit about Dragon's Den, but an awful lot about growing up in North Battleford, spending time in Saskatoon, building First Energy, and sort of the community work that we did along the way. And very proud of the work that we did.
And you should be. I presume then out of our conversation tonight, do you do consider yourself a success in life?
You know, the subtitle in the book, or the book itself, Redefining Success.
Yep.
The original title of the book in a longer format was Redefining Success in a Wealth-Obsessed World.
Okay.
And that's because we typically define success by how big is their farm, how big is their car, how big is their holiday, how big is their house, how big is their wallet, sometimes how big is their ego. My daughter, as I evolved my thinking, once said, why can't you define success by the size of the smile? And that's really the happiness quotient.
Yes,
so
exactly.
That's where redefining success came into being in terms of the name of the book. The idea that not everything is about another dollar. And did I live that world? I did. I absolutely did. Did I make a bunch of money? Yeah, I did. But I can't go back and buy a seat in the gymnasium the night that my daughter, and I get emotional remembering this, the night that I wasn't there and she won MVP for her year on the volleyball team and I had to hear about it from someone else.
That hurts.
And I was at the office making money. So that goes back to, am I successful? Lots of business successes, but my real pride comes in the relationship I have with 3 kids and their 3 husbands. I am very proud of the success I have with my family relationships.
Awesome. And I want to say thank you for your time tonight. I think everything you've said has just been spot on and relevant.
Thank you.
I think that you're welcome. I thank you, because I think the students that are going to be listening to this are going to say, hey, I get this guy. I can hear what he's saying. And I think that they can, take from that and hopefully apply it to what they're doing. So I just, again, want to say thank you for taking time. I know you're busy. And thanks to an insurance fellow here in town, he gave me your name and for doing these interviews. And he says, you got to get a hold of him. I said, okay. So I did.
Well, no, you found me and we connected and it happened. And thank you. Thank you for thinking of me.
I appreciate that. So I'm going to say have a great rest of your night, sir. And maybe we'll chat again. You never know.
Give it another year and I'm ready to go.
We'll do it again. And thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Cap.
All right. Have a great night.